Hey everyone, Guard the Leaf here. How's everyone doing? I want to wish all of my Canadian viewers a very happy Canada Day. And I want to take this opportunity and the day to actually talk about Canada. And we're not going to talk about the United States today at all. And today what I actually want to do is I want to read out everyone my Substack article I created. Now, I didn't really announce this to everybody. I mean, I announced it to the members as well as people in our Discord. But I figure, you know what, I'm going to start writing articles because it's a way for me to get things out. And, if I can't necessarily get it out in a video, at least I can write it out. So this first video is going to be, I'm going to read out my Substack article. And it's really about, a Canadian being overseas. And also, me and my epiphany when it came to my country. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading it out, and I will talk to you guys towards the end of the video. Being a Canadian overseas by a Canadian overseas. I'm not a writer, by the way, but here goes nothing for my first article, or does writing emails count? Anyways, growing up, I actually dreamed about moving away from Vancouver. I hated the rain. I complained about everything. I hated carrying umbrellas everywhere I went. I hated getting freaking bugs. Sorry about that. I hated always getting home, having to dry my shoes, and forgetting my umbrella, and having to buy another one on the way to work. I mean, I did have my collection of umbrellas. Anyways, after college, I worked my ass off to give myself a stable life. I applied heavily to jobs in the United States. I only had one bite in Silicon Valley, but the salary is way too low to be able to live on, comfortably. Though I still think to this day how different my life would be if I had accepted it. But life went on in the 604, and I managed to make my life as easy as possible by living downtown and working about 15 minutes away. Reduce the amount of rain and exposure I had to go through. Things were comfortable, but I still wasn't happy in Vancouver. And even though I had the Falls Creek seawall at my doorsteps, nature everywhere, good paying job, everything at my fingertips, I still wasn't happy. But in the mid 2010s, I had an opportunity to come up and finally work abroad. I was like, shit, it's actually happening, and I'm out of here. It was an odd experience because I was half excited, but half scared. I said my goodbyes to those who were close to me, packed up my stuff, and literally landed in a country I knew nothing about. Like literally, I had to look up on a map before leaving. I would even go as far as admitting I had a North American exceptionalism. I'm not afraid to admit it. I really noticed it when I often said, this is not how we do it back home. Today, I cringe at that thought of me using that phrase so much. Now, I didn't realize it. I had North American exceptionalism. I'm not going to say U.S. exceptionalism because I'm not a U.S. citizen, but to a certain extent, there is a bit of exceptionalism from Canadians as well. Some people might be like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that, but it's the honest truth. And I noticed it in myself when I first moved away. I noticed it when I started saying, this is not how I do it back home, or back home we did it this way. And one thing I realized, probably about a year and a half being away, is that, look, GTL, what you're used to at home is not what the rest of the world is like. The rest of the world has their own cultures. They have their own ways. Yes, it might not be what you're used to, but you're living in somebody else's country and you gotta kind of adapt, not them adapt to you. And that was a big learning lesson for me. And I don't think a lot of people living abroad, I think a lot of people living abroad kind of realize that, but there's people traveling, but it's just small quirks here and there where I caught myself saying, this is not how we do it back home. And it's more efficient to do it this way, or, things like that. Anyways, moving on. The Western entitlement. But landing in a foreign nation where right off the bat out of the airport, the orderly fashion and manners that I'm used to in Canada were gone. What I meant by this is that there's things like cars stopping for you at crosswalks, cars staying in their own lanes, personal space. My first instinct was like, what the fuck did I get myself into? A few months went by in this foreign, chaotic city I transferred to. And through the whole time, I found myself always saying, is it always like this? Is it always this chaotic? Why hasn't anyone improved this? Why doesn't the city fix this? It was just nonstop questioning on how other nations and all the cultures did things. I guess you could say I had a typical Western entitlement. But it wasn't until one of my staff members' family who was in and out of the hospital, and each time I could physically see the toll it was taking on and his family when it came to the hospital bills, to the point where he started asking for loans. This was my first instance where I thought to myself, wow, I'm so grateful that our healthcare back home, I literally have a walk-in clinic a block away if I needed it, and a hospital about 15 minute walk away. While sitting in our department office, I started asking my staff questions about the local medical system. And they said you need money to get treated. And no, I was not in the United States, if anybody's asking. I I asked, what happens if you break a bone or you need to get stitches? Stitches is something I used to quite get often, especially playing hockey. So I'm thinking if you're Canadian, you play hockey, you kind of understand what I'm talking about. Well, their answer was pay up. That was one of my staff said a few years before. They let one of their relatives just die because they couldn't afford it. I honestly didn't know what to say. It was a bit of a gut-wrenching story to hear. Another staff member's house burnt down, and I was told the fire trucks couldn't make it because there was too much traffic. I thought again to myself, wow, I don't know how I would handle that, but I'm thankful for the response time of our public fire response system. I asked my staff member if he was pissed, and he says, what can we do? It's how things are here. I also witness everyday life for those in poverty level income, where basic necessities like toothpaste, shampoo, drinkable water, and soap were hard to come by. The slums you see on TV, yeah, it was like that. For my job, I always travel from country to country. And staff members would always request if it was possible for me to get the hotel's complimentary toothbrush. Now, you guys, if you travel, I think you know what I'm talking about. It's the toothbrush, toothpaste amenities kit that hotels leave in case you don't have one. For me, it was are you serious? You want me to bring that back? You want me to get the free toothbrush? For them, it was a toothbrush for their siblings because they were going through rough times. The epiphany moment. The commonality between these three stories I was told by my staff switched something in my head. The wanting to leave Canada and the North American entitlement started to, how I say, leave my brain. It was the beginning of me realizing that my cushy life I had made for myself in Yaletown, Vancouver, the job that I had, the German turbocharged car I was driving, the ability to have a good life. All that I had back home is what many around the world would dream about having. What made me feel guilty was that I was complaining about it. I used to complain about my 30-minute commute. My staff had a 3-hour commute each way. I used to complain about Save-On Foods was out of my favorite bag of chips or salsa, or a restaurant that was out of anything, insert whatever item. Well, I was invited to a staff member's house for dinner, where it was only rice for dinner. That's it, like literally rice. Let me tell you, that was a humbling experience. The three stories above and witnessing what others around the world have to go through was a gut punch for me, which brought me back to thinking about the country where I'm from. After returning from my first stint away, I never complained about traffic again. I never complained about the hospitals or clinic lineups. I also never complained about a restaurant or grocery store not having something I wanted. Moving abroad humbled me, but it also made me realize what we do have in Canada that millions of people around the world would dream to have. I used to work in an area where a Canadian embassy was, and I would see lineups 30 deep of people just wanting to visit our country. Some would say they tried multiple times to get a visa to visit. Some in line said it's their dream to go, which made me realize how lucky I am to hold a Canadian passport. I left Canada saying goodbye to a place where I thought everything was bad and horrible. Our government, our healthcare, our everything was too expensive, you name it. Yeah, I complained a lot about the bike lines too. Yeah, GTL was one of those guys. I was one of those guys that always complained about Canada. But I came back the first time with appreciation for the passport that I hold and the country where I'm from. Many Canadians will never get to experience this epiphany that I went through. Some Canadians already knew this without having to leave our great country. But for me, I needed a swift kick in the ass and the reality check in order to wake me up from the entitled thoughts and beliefs. I'm a proud Canadian overseas. Whenever anyone asks where I'm from, I proudly say I'm from Canada. But if asked if I'm from the United States, I bluntly say no, and sometimes hell no. My wife says fuck no. But these days, I'm more than happy to fill people in on what's going on back home with our dysfunctional neighbor. Some say Canadians abroad act as ambassadors to Canada. I didn't like that saying before, but I'm starting to believe it now. Which is why this time being away is far different, because I know what I'm leaving behind back home. And honestly, I can't wait to get back. These days, there's no complaining from this Canadian. Instead, it's a lot of, I miss the seawall. I miss the fresh air. I miss our Canadian beer. I miss Akira Sushi on Denman Street, one of my favorite Japanese restaurants. I am grateful and proud to call Canada my home, wherever I am in the world. GTL. All right, so I'm back. I hope everybody understood my article. I mean, some of the comments that I have seen have been very appreciative. And thank you for commenting. I mean, it's my first video or article, and I was a little bit nervous. But one thing I do want to say is that, my epiphany that I went through had to happen only after I left. And if I didn't leave Canada, I'm pretty sure I would not have this channel. I'm pretty sure I would still be complaining about pretty much everything. So there's not really no advice on it. It's just me sharing my story right now. And I do hope that there are people in the community who can relate. And, who knows, maybe if there's somebody that that is nonstop complaining about Canada, maybe send them this video. Just tell them, hey, take a look and It really takes that gut punch, knowing what other cultures and countries go through to really realize what you have back home. So, yeah, that's it for this video. I will have a second video out that will talk about, what Canada means to some of our community members. And not only that, we are going to have Josh from the Enemy from Within channel give his shout out to Canada as well. So stick around for the second video. It should be out shortly. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys in the next video.